You're listening to the Influential Conversations podcast with the property management coach and industry influence of the year, Kirk, Stafford, and guests. Well, hello and welcome again to another episode of Influential Conversations. My name's Kirk Stafford, and with me today is someone I've been waiting to get onto this show, and it's with my greatest pleasures to introduce you to Jodie Stainton. Now, Jodie is currently the director of Harcourts Solutions in Brisbane. They are, unbelievably, she's just told me, the internationally number one property management company within the franchise group. Previously, she was national franchise director for another of the franchise groups that has now become a national group. Jodie, thank you and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kirk. I'm very excited to be here. I've been listening to your podcast and very excited that that you've reached out. It's wonderful.
You're always going to be on the list. It's just a matter of finding the slot to fit for both of us, really.
Yeah.
But no, look, it's a delight for me to have you on, Jodie. Now, who are you?
Oh,
I've told people about Jodie Stainton, national director or director of one of the the biggest international company or group in the franchise organisation. But who's Jodie Stainton really? How did you get into the industry? Let's start with that.
Okay, so it started back in 2001 and I was lucky enough, or it was actually 2000, I think, late. I was lucky enough to get into a business where property management was actually a really big focal part of the business right from back then, 23 years ago. You would remember, Kirk. It wasn't the same it is now. But I was lucky to have a principal-based property manager back then. So I got really, really good training. And I worked out really quickly that property management was the thing that I wanted to do. So it fits my personality. I think all the variations of it, from legals to advertising properties to meeting people, I really love all of that. It fit me really well right from the start.
Yeah, great. So what was your first role? Where did you begin? And it's interesting because when I talk to a lot of people, and majority, let's face it, I mean, this industry is, I think, 95% populated by women, which I think is an amazing thing. But a lot of them say, I just sort of fell into it. I didn't know what else to do, or I was leaving school and someone recommended real estate, and I started as a receptionist. Where did you start? Did you start straight in as a PM, or did you come in the same way as everyone else seems to have?
Everyone else did. So probably a little bit different. I knew I wanted to be in real estate. So back when I was about 6 and 7, I would notice that the houses would change, the fence would change, and I was really nosy and I wanted to see in everyone else's house. So I had this kind of thing about property really, really early on. Then, and I loved people. So it kind of I knew I wanted to be in real estate. So I then I got in by actually becoming a valuer. So I went in and studied property economics, but I only did a year of it. So I found valuing really, really lonely and already realised that it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I had this opportunity from a friend of mine. And I thought, if I can just do that for a year, I'm fairly certain I'll get into, because I called actually Ray White, one of the Ray White franchisees, really, really young, and said, no experience necessary, and said, hey, listen, I really want to be in real estate. And they said, well, have you ever rented a house? No. Have you ever sold a house? No. I live back home with my mum. And they were like, yeah, we'll call you. So I was like, oh, okay. So I got into valuing, and then knew that once I did that for a year or so, I could probably get into real estate. So that's how I got in. And I went in as an associate, and like I said, what actually happened is that unfortunately all of the team left. They kind of had a mass exodus in one day. And so as a sales associate, they were sort of like, we need bums on seats. So the principal came to me and said, I actually think you'll have, she said, longevity in this business, but I really think property management is for you. And I didn't know about the mass exodus, but I just thought this is a wonderful thing. And property management sounded really glamorous. And so I went, how wonderful. But it turns out she derailed my sales career by getting me into, because, they really needed someone in the seat. But I just loved it from the start. And I knew I was lucky enough I won a ticket actually to go to a conference, and it was a Michael Sheargold session. And from that moment, I realised that property management could be a career, and that this is something that I could actually really make my life. And so I kind of made that decision really early, which was sort of lucky.
Yeah, great. So a promising sales career cut short. so you could actually find your true calling.
I think so. And it's funny because I often think about sales and go, oh, geez, I love that. And, I think that's why I love the BDM side of property management, because I get in that sales area.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a natural part of my personality, but I just love all the stuff that goes along with management.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think the BDM facet of the job, you do need that. It's a different persona. It's a different personality and different personality attributes, I think, from a BDM to a PM. Some people are lucky that they can work across the two, but it is very much. I mean, people have really simplistically said, well, that's the listing side of the business. So, well, it's a bit more than that, because you've still got to onboard the client as well, and you've got to make sure that everything fits with the client and also with the property, and bringing it in and allocating it to the right personality in the office. But BDMs and PMs are almost as different as salespeople and PMs, really, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, but there is a part of me, and I think having worked at the previous company where I started the national franchise for property management, so I took people that have never been paid, so never not been paid before, took them to making their very first prospecting call to building their own businesses. And what I actually found is that they can do it if they desperately want to. And what I think the difference is that they've actually never been taught. And no one's invested in them to actually do that. And there is this, I think, especially with women, they have a security kind of issue around, putting themselves out there. But funny enough, once you do it and you teach them how to do it, they're actually excellent at it. And they start to, and I've seen it in our business here, where my property managers now are going out and doing presentations and winning new business. And it's all because I've really invested the time in them to do that and told them that they can do it. And I think it's amazing how all of a sudden now they're saying, when a BDM brings a property in and it might be at lower commission, they'll go, hang on, I'm not managing it for that. So it's really what happens when we invest time in, and they're actually taught that way. And I think for a really long time, people have gone, oh, property managers and salespeople, they're sort of the principal normally is dealing with the salespeople and putting all that effort in there, but actually the property managers can do it. So it's an interesting thing that I've learned.
Yep. I think the skills, from a BDM point of view, I think the skills that salespeople have are transferable. But I think they also need a lot of that training. One of the things that you mentioned before, cold calling, and I was actually talking to someone yesterday. I said cold calling is actually not a difficult thing once you get used to hearing the word no, because it's not. I mean that no, and I think we hear this so often. It's not to do with you personally. It's to do with the service or the product that you've got. It's not a reflection of you or your personality or your worth. It's just that for them, it's not now. Whoever you're talking to, it's not now.
Exactly. And I think sometimes it's actually, it's a bit of a thing for me how fast I can get the no to get onto the next one, because I know the next one will come in. Does that make sense? So it's sort of like, if I'm not right for you, I'm not right for you. Like, and I don't mind if they say, also, I think it's the way you deal with the no. So if they've got a fantastic property manager right now, fantastic. I'd love to hear about her, because I'm always looking for really great people, and I'll steal her so you come with me. But, I think you can get in terms of personality. If you can really just talk to people and not worry about the no, and just and make it a fun and that sort of thing, then the thing is, my goal is one day they will call me. They just will, because they will remember that little funny thing. They'll remember that they liked me. They might even want to give me something back. And so often they might say, hey, listen, I can't give you my property because I really love my property manager, but you know what, my friend, I think they'd be really great for you. So it's just about making the call, but also going, you know what, I just need to get to 20. If I get to 20, I get one. So that no, crossing off the list, I get there. So it's just a competition.
Yeah, and look, you're right. It's that process of elimination. And if you can get to that point where you go, okay, well, how many no's is it going to take me to get a yes? And we used to, look, I'm a refugee from sales as well, but I got trained in the 80s, and it was a case of, how many no's is it going to take to get a yes? And you reverse engineer it.
Yep.
So you say, okay, well, I need to bring in, or I want to bring in this month, X number of new properties.
Yep.
Now, I know that I need to speak to X number of people to do that, because I get, out of every 20, say for a number, out of every 20 people I speak to, 17 are going to say no, 3 of them are going to say yes, and one of those is going to come across immediately, and the other 2 can be banked for future.
Yeah,
so you start to reverse engineer back.
Yeah, we work on 80-21. So make 80 calls, and these are like fairly cold calls, right? Like 80 calls, 20 connects, one opportunity, and about a 50% rate of whether they're going to be now or later. So we know exactly how many calls we need to make to get the exact amount of numbers. I'm in a really fortunate position where we don't have to do so much of that because we have a really large sales team. So, we can, it's probably more important for us to build relationships with the sales team, make sure we're extracting every lead we can from there. But we are doing calls as well. And what we're aiming to do is about 40 calls a day. So I know over 2 days I'll get one opportunity. And that's great. Yeah.
That's true. I just want to touch on that a little bit and expand on that a little bit more because you're saying you're the number one office internationally for property management. Now, you've been with Harcourts Solutions 12 months, 2 years?
It's only a year.
It's a year. I'm losing track of time. I think COVID's done that to a lot of people. It's twisted their time. I'm thinking, you've been there for ages. I go, no, hang on, I'm sure it was 2022.
It's a weird thing. I feel like I've always been here, and my team say it's like you were never not here. Like we kind of can't remember life before you, but it's one of those things where, I've only actually been here a year. And I was fortunate enough to walk into a business that is the number one team, right? So it's one of those things where I don't think that I've taken them to number one. They were number one anyway. But I do think there's things that we've done that have been innovative, and I think we've changed the direction of the team quite substantially, which has been but they're an amazing team anyway.
Oh, yeah, great. When you say change the direction of them, how what does that look like internally?
Yeah, so I think we went through the last couple of years, we've gone through a really big period of where our owners are selling out, and I think that's happening across the country. And what I think we had was, and this is just the way that I think about it, but I think about it as, actually, this is from Jodie Ford. I should mention this. So Jodie Ford from Coronas taught me this. Okay. She sees it, and I see it now, as property managers retain the business and BDM is growth. And so once you teach property managers how to retain business and how to actually go out and get business, they can actually retain. So my team needs to retain about 3 per month each in order for us, for BDM to be the growth. So that directional change, I changed the bonuses, the KPIs, everything in the business so that there was more of a focus around property managers actually going out and getting the business. And what happened was, when I first got here, one of the things that happened that just sort of sparked, I couldn't believe that it happened, but one of our property managers got a call in for a property, and because of her great work, and they wanted to give her another property, and she sent it off to the BDM to sign up and then get back. And I had another situation where we had a property manager where that one of their owners had bought another property and it went over to the BDM and then came back. And I thought, this is a really interesting thing. For some reason, BDM is seen as all new business and property management is seen as just tasks. And I think previously there'd been a big focus around task management. I've got a big focus around the business management. For example, I did business plans with all of the property managers. So really going through what their numbers are, and I'm happy to share that with anyone, but they have full transparency over how much money their portfolio brings in. They're in charge of their business unit, their losses, their gains. So what we've got now is what we call a net zero bonus policy. So if they lose 2, but they gain 2, for example, they get 2% of their management fees as a bonus. And the only other criteria is that they also have a NPS satisfaction score of plus 20. So there's only 2 criteria for this bonus. So it's not all of this task management, your arrears have to be, and lease renewals and maintenance and routines. I've reorientated everything to be, you actually need to maintain your business unit and you need to understand all of your numbers and you have to have client satisfaction. So from that, our property managers are now actually trying to find business or winning business or doing all sorts of things that they've never done before. And I think that would be our biggest strategic change. And it really has made a big difference in our business.
Yeah. Well, it would, because you're getting them interested, and it goes back to the old thing of, and I was taught this years ago as well, what gets rewarded gets done. And it's really simple. When you put incentives in front of people and say, if you do these things, and they're really simple, you will get, as you said, 2% of the management fee. And that's across the portfolio. I'm taking it rather than just the properties. For that month, you'll get 2% of the fee. I think that's perfectly acceptable. You're not really, if anything, if you go on the other way and you lost those 2 properties, well, you've just blown up that 2% or more anyway.
Yeah, and probably the other thing I think what we've done really well is bring the sales and property management team together. So we'd had a loss of something like 238 properties to sales in the previous year, and we only sold 98 of them. So we're at somewhere around sort of 35%. And for being such a strong office with a strong property management team and strong sales team, that disconnect was probably more obvious through that. And so the other thing that we did was really bring that together. And so I started having our property managers do what's called a client needs analysis call and really go through and have a decent investing conversation with them. So things like, what's the yield on the property? Are you looking to purchase another property? Are you looking to sell? Do we need to do any capital works? All of those sorts of, have you had a tax depreciation schedule? Do you need a financial update? So those things, we did that as part of the lease renewal calls. And what it did was it identified if there was another property that they were either looking to buy or sell. And then we could actually send that over to our sales team really nice and early and get them in the conversation early. And so we've actually had 100% of sales sell through us 2 months ago. Last month it was only 72. But to go from 38 to 72 and even 100%, it's all about really bringing that sales and property management team together. And I signed all of our properties to salespeople as well and let them have at our database, which again, is not usual that people do that. But when you've got sellers selling, you want to be, I want to be the person that sells it.
Well, you do. Number one, there's obviously the sales fee, which is due to the office. But number two, there's then the chance of retaining that business if it gets sold to another investor.
Exactly.
So there's a double edge to that. And there's no look, and I mean, look, I believe that property management's a business unit in itself.
It is.
And I don't believe that you actually need a sales arm to run a very successful property management business. But where you've got an estate agency as such, which does both sales and property management, it needs to be one business, two business units, but operating as one business overall. And that means, absolute cooperation between both arms of it.
Completely
both have got to feed the other, and they've got to be. You've got to have complete cohesion between the teams. And look, maybe not completely, because I don't think your personalities are ever going to get it to 100%. But you need to have a team that is all focused in the one direction, and that's number one, the good of the company, and the good of the company only comes from making sure that your clients are well taken care of.
That's exactly right. It's once we getting the stories out of the NPS client satisfaction score and being able to put those stories in front of the salespeople all the time, rebuilt trust with regards to what the property managers were doing. Please understand, the property managers are already great. Like it's more about the selling of them. And making sure that the salespeople know what we're actually doing. They were already excellent. They've already been number one internationally and all those things. But what I found was that probably the salespeople didn't really understand how good the property managers were, and vice versa, actually. You go to the awards for Harcourts or for the big, and it's usually about sales. It's not. There's a lot. There are property management awards, but you're not seeing the level of individual awards that you are with sales. So it's one of those things where you find that the property managers probably know what the salespeople are doing, but the salespeople don't really know how good the property managers are. And I had to really just bridge that gap and say, no, this is how much better we are in our leasing fees, in our let days on market, our vacancy rates, our the average rents, how much we're getting more for your clients, like all of those things. And once I started doing that, we just started seeing it pour in. So
once they're educated into what actually goes on behind the scenes, salespeople, and I found this in a couple of the roles where we've had that more future-focused approach to the relationship between the sales and the property management teams. Once the salespeople actually have an understanding of what PMs do, they're able more to sell that facet of the business. Yeah. They're able more to speak to those points, as long as they don't start talking about fees. Don't start with your salespeople and property management fees. PMs and sales fees. This goes both ways.
You start doing it to me and we'll start doing that to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, see how you like it when the boot's on the other foot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So what have you found? I mean, obviously staff for us in the industry is a big challenge. Outside of that, where have you found your challenges in the 12 months, but even before that when you were with Coronas, where have you found your challenges over the last few years?
Personally or professionally, do you think? Or like,
We can talk personally if you like, if you're open to talking personally. I mean, I know a bit about your backstory, but obviously the audience does. It's what you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. So personally, I think, I've had a few challenges in terms of my health. So when I had my baby back in 2016, they did breach my spine with the epidural. And so that has caused I get neuropathy in my hands, which just means pins and needles, and I lose feeling in my legs and things like that sometimes. So that can be quite significant. And then from that, unfortunately, I've got some markers for autoimmune diseases that they're sort of trying to figure out what's going on with me. So I have had some health challenges that have been something that I've needed to manage, and probably have never had to think about health before. So that's something that I think in some ways probably makes me a little bit more empathetic to people and what they're going through, because I think when you've gone through that, it does help. And a lot of women obviously do get autoimmune and those sorts of things and going through different challenges in their health. So I think that's helped me in some ways. And then professionally, I think probably the challenges have been, I sort of got to that point of what do I really want in my life and where am I going? I'd worked really hard for a really long time, and I feel like I probably felt like I was giving a lot, and where was I've done everything based on passion, and I really have, and I actually think that that's a really good way to be. I also think, though, I probably wasn't taking care of myself and my family in the way that I probably needed to. That was a really big challenge to go through, like when I was doing my previous role, I was doing it for the absolute love of property managers and trying to get them into their own businesses, but hadn't yet got into my own business and sorted myself out. And that was a really interesting challenge, and to let go of all of that, to go, I can let go of that to actually move my life forward. It was a really interesting thing. And what I found was that actually I developed passion for this anyway, and I'm still helping people. And I still keep connected to those people. But that was a really big challenge to actually let that go and really go, what do I really want? And what does my future look like? And I think people get to, I'm 45. I think I'm definition of a midlife crisis. What does that look like? What does it really look like, and where am I going? And I've always been lucky enough that I mentioned that conference that I went to with Michael Sheargold, and he actually got us into this session. It was the last session of the day, and he said, I want you to be in a meditative state. But basically the premise of the session was, today's your last day, and you're going to die, but you're completely happy and content to do so. And I want you to look around, and what can you see, and what can you smell and hear and touch? And I had this incredibly strong vision. And my whole life now has been, I make decisions either taking me toward that vision or away from it. And what I found was I was in that vision. So I have been making those decisions, but I probably needed to make some more decisions weighted towards myself and my family, which I've never done before. So that was kind of, how I got to Harcourts Solutions. It's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah. Gee, that's quite a powerful tool to use when you say this is your last day and you're happy and content. What is it around you that you've got, that you've created, that has created that within you? Yeah. So what do you do now for self-care? I mean, we were talking about that a minute ago, and it's sort of one of these things I've noticed that in the conversations I've had with a lot of people over time, they say, well, I do this. I make sure I take regular breaks. I make sure I meditate or yoga or something along those lines. Or, me, I've got my kayak in the summer and my skiing in the winter and those sorts of things. What about you? What do you do?
I think the first thing is just getting back to my kids and the husband. I was working really long hours. I do work long hours, but I feel like I'm more present when I'm with them. And I'm very aware that my daughter's 8. She's going to be 13 and hate me soon. So, and my son's 11, turning 11. And I think just really aware that when I'm with them, I'm really with them. I think that's probably the first thing. And I'm now doing walks in the morning. So I do somewhere between 3 and 5 Ks every morning, and just making sure that I can when I can. When my body starts not being okay, I have to stop, and I have to be okay with stopping. So given that I was quite an athlete, it was a really hard thing to go from being an athlete and playing as much sport as I wanted to, and it was such an outlet for me, to going to almost nothing. So for almost 6 years, I did very little. And
you were a state netballer, weren't you?
Yeah, I played state. Yeah, and I actually got selected for the national team, but I did my ankle. So anyway, I had a couple of knee reconstructions and all that stuff that comes with netball.
I was about to ask how your knees were. Netball's probably the worst sport for knees, isn't it? Yeah.
Brutal. I've had 2 knee reconstructions and another 2 surgeries, and I think my knee's gone again. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Ooh.
But I think when you're that sort of person, you've been a fairly decent athlete. You have an outlet that you don't even realise you have. Like, you have an outlet for your aggression and for what's going on, and you get out of the court and you're not thinking about things, and you're just able to let everything go and be truly competitive, or whatever for you that looks like.
Yep.
Whereas I went to having none of that and suddenly. So it was one of those things where, and also truly scared about my future. What happens if my body completely shuts down and all those things. But so now I do meditation, so I don't do it often as I like, but I have the Calm app and I'll do that. But the other thing that I think is probably, for me, one of the best things I started putting into my probably at least weekly routine, if not a couple of times a week, I love comedians. I just get a lot from them. And when I'm having a moment, I will literally put on a YouTube clip from some of my favourite comedians and just laugh. And I think that keeps your spirits high. And it's something that I'm bringing into the business as well. It's just making sure that we put on a clip and like we all have a bit of a laugh, put it through Teams, and just making sure you've got that fun and laughter.
Yep.
I think it's really
I think that's great. Yeah, because then you start to realise that life's not all serious.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. And
it doesn't have to be. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I'm genuinely.
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just
who is your favourite comedian, by the way? Top 2.
I love Michael McIntyre because he's so clean and funny, but equally I love, and I've just forgotten his name, and he's the crassest, rudest thing you can imagine, but he's hilarious. An Australian comedian. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I've just forgotten his name. Yeah, he's terrible.
Or someone like that. Yeah. Oh, Kevin Carney.
No. Oh God, I just can't believe
it'll come to us just as we finish the recording. That's normally the way. Yeah. Look, I mean, and I'm the same. I mean, look, I've got people like Billy Connolly and those sorts of things. Robin Williams, and Robin Williams is probably still would be my number
amazing.
One. He's just what a shame that he couldn't find his way through. But then that's that. I think that seems to be the curse of that brand of genius. But he was just so incredibly funny. I remember seeing him being interviewed by Jana Wendt one day. And this is going back. This is now I'm really showing my age. And he turned to her and said, "This is interviewing hell, isn't it?" Because he completely derailed everything. So,
he would have. He's amazing. I found out I looked into him a little bit more about his death, and it actually turned out he had Lewy dementia. So Lewy body dementia, and so one of the things that if this is true, this is what I read, but he actually decided that he didn't want to not remember everything and not be a part of everything, and so he did what he did to preserve everything that he had.
Gee, that's a considered approach,
and I sort of understand that, and I think I'd probably be a bit similar. So that was an interesting find. It wasn't just that depressive thing that we think comes with comedians, which he clearly did have too. So
that's true. Anyway, look, I think enough talk about that. We're sort of that's veering into something completely away from property management and us. So you say you went through 6 years of doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
What was your mental state like? How did you? Thank you. Lights out. What were you doing? Was that how you came to meditation, or what were you doing those 6 years to keep yourself right? I guess. I think I probably just buried my head in work. That probably is a good and bad thing. Yep.
I'm glad that I had that avenue, because I think when you're passionate about something and love something, then at least it feels easy to do. Yep. But I did lose that side of me that was fit and healthy and looking after myself and that sort of stuff. So, but I buried myself in work. And in some ways that led me to here. So I don't regret that. Yeah.
So it was a bit of that actually helped you to get, find that realization as to where you wanted to be and to do something that was for you and your future.
That's right. Yes.
That's a great thing. Yeah, that's fantastic. And what does the future hold? What does 2024, 5, 6, 30 look like for Jodie Stainton?
So I want to double this rent roll. So we're at 2,000 properties and I want to double it. I want to get a bit over that actually. I think somewhere around the 5,000 is where I want to get to. So I do have a vision for the team that we have, that growing them and getting them to where they want to go. And that's probably why I have to get to 5,000, to be honest. So with growth, it's the only thing you can do with growth is help your people. So that's where I really want to go. I just want to remain innovative and trying things and doing different things. And I think that's the key to my personality is what can we, and I think having a larger rent roll allows me to do that. I can go, hey, how about we try this? Or how about we do this? Or I've always really wanted to do this. It allows me to kind of play in that field, which I really like, that space. So that's what it looks like for me. We have a really strong growth plan. We've had 3 salespeople join us just in the last 3 months. So that's, we're doing some pretty good things. We've got a beautiful office. I feel like my partnership is really strong. The 2 men that I work with are just amazing. The 3 of us get along and, we've got some pretty big plans. But to be honest, what we really want most is just that our people love coming to work. They love being here, which they do. I actually said to people, you don't have to come in, work from home. I worked from home for 8 years. So, you can do whatever you want and they come in every day. So that to me seems like we've got a good culture around people want to be here and that's what we want, really.
Yeah, and that's right. And look, that's all you can do, really. And I think as leaders, I mean, the culture does start with us and you've got to look at it and say, well, realistically, we've got to create that environment. Our team have got to know that they're appreciated, they're nurtured, they're valued probably more than the actual business unit itself is.
Exactly.
Because without them, everything else stops. But they have their own wants and their own needs.
Exactly.
So you've got to meet those. And if they're all deciding, no, we don't want to work from home, that's a marker of an incredibly good, strong, tight culture. What have you done to create that? Are there any key innovations or key hints you could give someone who's struggling a little bit with creating that culture? What would you suggest they try?
So I know this is going to sound really crazy, but we have, just as a really silly thing, but we have our meetings on Fridays instead of Wednesdays when everyone else does. I know that sounds really strange, but Fridays, everyone's in a really happy mood. They're not thinking about what they've got for the week. They've done the week. They're in a much different mood. So therefore, they're also in a mood, well, and maybe it's because we've worked with them to get to this point, but they're in a mood where they want to go forward. So when we say, hey, we want to implement this or we want to implement that, they're actually ready for it. So I know that sounds a strange thing to say, but just moving the meetings to Fridays, I honestly think helped. We do fun things. So last Friday or the Friday before, we had karaoke after our Friday meeting. So we moved the meeting till later and, we did a 3:00 session and then we all stayed on and did karaoke. So we try and have fun all the time. We make sure we've got snacks in our kitchen. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we've got a whole heap of different snacks and things that people can just munch on all day just to make sure that, because I tend to find they're not eating, they're running from appointment to appointment. I just want to make sure that they've got something in their bellies. We do, I think I do think with the bonus structure, their wages, I wouldn't say that we're at the top of the wages. We're fairly well middle ground, but with the bonuses and things that they've got in place, it really does put them up there. And I do think, offering cars is something that's really helpful as well. So we do have cars for people, and I do think that helps. But really, it's about, honestly, none of that would matter if we didn't care about them, didn't jump in when something was going wrong and allow them to make mistakes, allow them to, get on the phone with their owners and smooth things over and all of those sorts of things. If we weren't there for them in those moments, I don't think any of the other stuff would matter. It's about just, you're in a situation, let me help you through it and take the pain away. I think that's really important.
Yep. And you're absolutely right. The hallmark of every high-performing team I know of, and certainly the teams that I've run, the hallmark has always been, I'm here to have you back. Really,
absolutely.
As I said, as leaders, culture starts with us. Culture comes from your team knowing that they are absolutely supported. And I mean, I used to have a no surprises policy with my groups, and just say, look, come to me before somebody else comes to me, please, so that we can work a way through whatever the situation is. Yeah. They realise they're not going to be, have their throat jumped down, or they're, going to be held out into public ridicule in front of the rest of the office. It makes things a heck of a lot easier, because you don't make examples of people, you make examples of situations.
Exactly. And that's the interesting thing. We do our morning huddles as well. So every day we get together quickly and go through our top 3 things we want to achieve for the day and that sort of stuff. So we all know where each other are. We are lucky we work from the one office. I think that's actually been a really great thing. I've seen it where you've got a big team working from different offices. being all in the one office, I think really works for us. So they can all help each other too and learn from each other. But the other thing that I've found, and I do think this comes from not admonishing people and actually understanding that mistakes happen and who cares, let's just learn from it, is we now go through case studies. We've got a continual improvement part of our Friday meeting, and we go through case studies as to what's happened, and no one takes it as an affront on them. So they will bring a case study and go, hey, I've got a great case study for us. We learned this, this and this. And I go, amazing, let's present it to the team. Like that is a vastly different thing from, don't tell anyone that I made this mistake, or, I don't want anyone to know. So we celebrate that, which I think is a really big thing to what we do.
Because somebody else has probably done something similar, or is in the middle of it and you don't know about it until it's too late.
We've all done it. We've all made horrendous mistakes. But I even have a mistake budget. I even have a mistake budget on the business plan, so they know that they can make mistakes. We measure it, but we know we can make mistakes. So, and I think that's, so we do $15 per property as a mistake fund, and they're allowed, if they don't think that they can negotiate it out or whatever, they're allowed to use their mistake fund to cover it, for the business to cover it. And I think, again, it's just a different thing. So,
True enough. Yeah, that's a really good one, that you do budget for mistakes. So they are part of your plan, because we're human. Yeah, we're human. We make mistakes.
And I've done it. Plenty of mistakes.
Oh, actually, no, both hands in the air.
Yes. Everything in the air.
I've probably made every mistake known. But, and the thing is, I've always taken ownership of them, or I hope I've always taken ownership of them.
Yeah,
exactly. You look back and you go, I probably could have handled that a bit differently. But that's, again, human nature. You only learn by your mistakes and by watching other people make mistakes sometimes too. Anyway, I think that's a really good place for us to leave it, Jodie. I am so incredibly grateful for you for giving us nearly 45 minutes of your time. I'm sure that there are some really, really good hints and takeaways in this for our audience. And again, I say thank you, and I look forward to seeing you hit that 5,000 mark in the next few years.
We will. I promise we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Jodie Stainton, Harcourts Solutions in Brisbane, the #1 international office for the Harcourts Group for Property Management. Again, thank you so very much. You've been listening to another podcast in the Influential Conversations series. This series is proudly brought to you by Tappy, helping property managers deliver a world-class maintenance experience to their landlords and tenants, and providing a total property care solution. Inspection Express, the market leader in property inspection reporting and digital signature property documentation, giving you a seamless approach to the way that you manage properties. And Agent Dynamics, the Australian market-leading team development ecosystem to help you nurture, grow and retain your property teams since 2014. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next time for the next in this series.